Point Park sports are on fire right now. Pitt football and the Steelers are in the thick of their season as Penguins hockey returns. And a Week 5 recap in the NFL, October baseball is here, and the NBA preseason is underway. It's time to come on down to the Pioneer Sideline. Hello, and welcome back to Pioneer Sideline. I'm your host, Natalia Hillen. This past Saturday, the Point Park men's soccer team played IU East and tied the Red Wolves 2-2. In the 16th minute, Matthias Lima kicked a nice cross to the left post and found Moritz Sarford's feet in front of the net. Sarford shot and scored the first goal for the Pioneers. The Red Wolves got their first goal 2 minutes into the second half off of a penalty kick. In the 53rd minute, Jaime Rodriguez scored the second goal, making the score 2-1. IU East then had a second opportunity to score a penalty kick because of an IU East player falling in the box. The game ended in a tie 2-2. Moving on to the Point Park women's soccer team, last Thursday night at Highmark Stadium, they worked hard and took the win against Midway University with a final score of 2-0. The first goal was scored off a corner kick by Mariah Rojas and shot in by Athena Beck in the 2nd minute of the first half. The second goal of the game was scored off another corner kick by Rojas, where she put it in front of the net for Holly Pasco to shoot. The Pioneers played another home game this past Saturday and played IU East University. The Pioneers battled it out and ended up tying the game 1-1. The score was 0-0 at the half. In the second half, IU East came around and scored the first goal of the game in the 53rd minute. Shortly after, Tamaya Wolford made her way to the net and got a goal, making the score 1-1. Both the men's and women's teams will be back on the field on Thursday, October 13th, and will be playing Brescia University. Good luck to both teams. Now on to Point Park's cross-country team. This past Saturday, the men and women's teams competed in the Carnegie Mellon Invitational at Schenley Park and had a great meet overall. The men's team placed 5th out of 14 teams. Some great times were run by senior Trevin Carter, placing 29th out of 135 runners, and he was the first runner from Point Park to cross the finish line with a time of 27:24. And close behind him was sophomore Yannick Wendelbend with a 27:26 and freshman Josh Gosselin with a 27:29. After the meet, head coach Tim Kramer shared his thoughts on how the men's team did. Quote, "The men really focused in on what we've been practicing all week, which was packing together, racing as a group, and really attacking the middle miles of this course. That's something that we wanted to work on from the last meet," end quote. Finishing up in Point Park's top 5 were Eliza James, placing 36th at 27:36, and Logan Gonzalez with a 27:41. Now onto the women's team. The Pioneers placed 5th out of 16 teams on Saturday. Senior Alyssa Campbell placed 2nd out of 135 runners with a time of 18 minutes and 44 seconds. The top 5 Point Park runners were freshman Carlin Daybee with a 19:57, junior Ali Placia with a 20:01, sophomore Yana Schmidt with a 20:07, and Emily Leo with a 20:59. Head coach Tim Kramer also shared his thoughts on how the women's team did. Quote, "For Alyssa to get 2nd overall, that was a huge race for her. Then we had Carlin, Ali, Yana, and Emily as our top 5 today. This puts them in a good spot for the NAIA Great Lakes coming up in 2 weeks," end quote. Good luck to the Pioneers as they train for the NAIA Great Lakes Challenge meet on October 22nd. After the break, we get an inside scoop on how the volleyball team did against IU Kokomo and an update on the men's and women's golf teams.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, and welcome back to News Night. most of the student body of the Pittsburgh Public School.
Some of the United States allies.
Thursday, the FBI was seen raiding.
Let's get started with today's forecast.
Today's high will only reach about 31 degrees.
It's looking a little cooler than we've seen in the past few weeks.
All this and more.
All this and more
All this and more coming up on Newsnight.
coming up on Newsnight.
Coming up on Newsnight.
Welcome back. Now I'll send things over to Hannah Bazet to talk about how the volleyball team did and what to expect from the golf teams in their next matches. Hannah?
Thanks, Nat. The Point Park women's volleyball team scored big this past weekend, securing victories in both of the games they played. The first game was held on Friday, October 3rd against St. Mary of the Woods College. The game ended up as a clean sweep for the Pioneers. However, the girls had to fight hard for the victory. The first set ended with a score of 25-16. The Pioneers controlled the first set, but St. Mary's fought back and applied pressure during the second and third sets. To begin the second, the Pioneers were trailing by 14-6 until Stephanie Rivero Pacheco came up big with 6 kills, and the girls eventually got to a 24-23 lead. To seal the second set victory, Julia Follador followed with a set point, making the final score of the second set 25-23. Up 2 sets, the Pioneers entered the third again, trailing 19-12. The Pioneers dug deep and went on a 13-4 run, including 9 kills. The girls finished this game with a score of 25-23. The team was able to carry the momentum into their Sunday match against Indiana University Kokomo. Unlike the game on Saturday, the Pioneer ladies struggled during the first set. They rallied together to try to get something going, but it just wasn't enough, as the girls ended the first set with a score of 25-15. The second and third sets were back and forth between the teams, as the Pioneers secured the victory in the second, but with a score of 25-22. The Cougars won the third with a score of 25-20. The fourth set was once again back and forth between the teams, but the Pioneers were able to turn up the heat and got a few big kills to win the fourth set 27-25. Finally, with a tied game, the Indiana Cougars were not wanting to go quietly, but neither were the Pioneers. Like the sets before, the team with the highest score alternated. However, when the set score hit 11-10, the Pioneers began to build momentum and ran away with the game. The final score was 15-11 Pioneers. The Pioneers are now 14-4 for their season and remain unbeaten in the River States Conference. The Pioneer ladies will play again on October 14th at 4 p.m., and we are hoping they can keep their winning streak alive. Moving on to golf, the men's team had a 3-week break, but plays again on October 17th at the Sewickley Heights Golf Club. The women's golf team also has a short break before joining the men's team and competing at the Point Park Invitational. There, both teams will compete as the host team, and we can't wait to see how they do. That's all I have. Back to Nat at the desk.
Thanks, Hannah. After the break, we'll get some insight on how the rest of the sports world is doing. Stay tuned. Welcome back. We now send things over to Jacob Kubik to update us on all things locally. Jacob?
Thanks, Nat. The Pitt Panthers welcomed the Hokies of Virginia Tech to Heinz Field to battle in a high-scoring affair this past Saturday. Both starting quarterbacks had a somewhat quiet day. Virginia Tech's quarterback, Grant Wells, was 25 of 47 with 277 yards passing with a touchdown and an interception. And Pitt starter Keaton Slovis was 15 of 28 with 170 yards passing with no touchdowns and an interception. Pitt running back Israel Abanikanda took over the game from here. Abanikanda had 36 carries for 320 yards and 6 touchdowns. 320 yards rushing broke the Pitt rushing record that was previously held by Tony Dorsett, who rushed for 303 yards against Notre Dame in the 1975 season. Abanikanda also tied the ACC single-game touchdown record with 6. The Panthers won the game with the final score of 45-29. The Panthers will be enjoying Week 7 from home on a bye week and will be back in action October 22nd against Louisville. The Pittsburgh Pirates concluded their season last week against the St. Louis Cardinals, finishing the season with a record of 62 wins and 100 losses. It was a disappointing season, to say the least, for the Bucs, but the promise of young talent like O'Neal Cruz, Brian Reynolds, and Cabrian Hayes should keep fans hopeful going into next season. The Pittsburgh Penguins closed their preseason on the right foot with 2 wins in their final 2 games. The Penguins battled the Red Wings in Detroit and won by a final score of 3-2. Forwards Josh Archibald, Brian Rust, and Jason Zucker tallied the 3 goals. In the final preseason game, the Penguins welcomed the Buffalo Sabres to town. Sidney Crosby tallied 2 goals and an assist, and Jake Gensel scored 1 goal and had 2 assists, both having 3-point games. Evgeny Malkin had 3 assists, and 22-year-old Ty Smith had a goal and an assist. Regular season play for the Pens opens with the Arizona Coyotes at home on October 13th and against the Tampa Bay Lightning on October 15th. With that in mind, I'm going to send things to John Mayer for this week's Steelers Fan 7 Sideline Spotlight. John?
Thanks, Jacob. The Pittsburgh Steelers fell to the Buffalo Bills this past Sunday by a score of 38-3. It was a rough day in all 3 phases of the game for Pittsburgh, as the offense was only able to muster up 3 points, while Josh Allen was dominant against the Steelers' defense, putting up 424 yards through the air, along with 4 touchdown passes, and the special teams unit had multiple blunders as well, including multiple Chris Boswell field goals and a muffed kick return early by James Pierre. Facing the Bills on the road at Highmark Stadium was a very tough environment for Steelers rookie quarterback Kenny Pickett to make his first career start, to say the least. But the Steelers' first-round pick held his own despite the loss, passing for 327 yards, the most passing yards by a Steelers QB in a game since January 11th, 2021, and the rookie continued to show confidence and toughness under center. One moment of toughness that Pickett showed during Sunday's loss was when he shoved Shaq Lawson after a cheap hit late in the 4th quarter of Sunday's game, going toe-to-toe with the Bills' edge rusher and not backing down. Another Steelers rookie that stood out was wideout George Pickens, as he shined for the 2nd straight week with Pickett under center, racking up 83 yards on 6 receptions against the Bills. Pickens now has 12 catches to go along with 185 yards in these past 2 weeks. The Steelers rookie connection of Kenny Pickett and George Pickens is one of few bright spots for Pittsburgh right now, and don't be surprised if we see Kenny to continue to look George's way, as Pickens has played very well these past 2 games, while the other starting wideouts, Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool, have continued to struggle with drops. The Steelers look to get their season back on track and avoid a 5th straight loss this Sunday and Kenny Pickett's first career home start against the all-too-familiar Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That's all I have in this week's Steelers Fan 7 Spotlight. Back to you, Nat.
Thanks, Jacob and John. Now let's hear from Matt Palangi with a recap on the Week 5 of the NFL, how October baseball is looking, and what to look out for in this year's NBA season. Matt?
Thanks, Nat. It's October baseball. The MLB postseason is finally here, and the wildcard round did not disappoint. In the AL wildcard games, the Cleveland Guardians and Seattle Mariners both won their series 2-0. The Mariners will play the Houston Astros, and the Guardians will play the New York Yankees in the divisional round. In the NL, the Philadelphia Phillies beat the St. Louis Cardinals 2-0, and the Padres beat the Mets 2-1. The Phillies will play the Atlanta Braves, and the Padres will play the LA Dodgers. Best of luck to all these teams in their best-of-5 series in the divisional round. That's it for the MLB. Now let's look at the NBA. The NBA preseason has officially started, and all basketball fans cannot be more excited. The preseason gives us a great look at these rosters and a preview of what we may see this year. The preseason has already showed us many highlights, and all NBA fans, including myself, could not be more excited. Now a recap of Week 5 of the NFL season. To start off, we got an absolute snooze fest of a game with the Colts beating the Broncos 12-9 with neither team scoring a touchdown. Sunday featured a game in London with the New York Giants beating the Green Bay Packers 27-22 early morning. The LA Chargers beat the Cleveland Browns 30-28 with both teams showing an excellent rush attack with a combined total of 451 rushing yards for the game. The Saints and Seahawks had a high action-packed game with Saints player Taysom Hill making huge plays, scoring 3 touchdowns to beat Seattle 39-32. The New York Jets are starting to look better, scoring 40 points against a solid Dolphins team. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Atlanta Falcons stirred up some controversy after Falcons lineman Grady Jarrett sacked Tom Brady on a huge third down in the fourth quarter, but a flag was thrown and the tackle was ruled roughing the passer, which in many fans' eyes was a terrible call. A handful of teams took a huge victory to secure their strong records. The Vikings advanced to 4-1 with their win over the Bears. The Cowboys advanced to 4-1 with the win over the Rams, and the Eagles beat the Cardinals to advance to 5-0. The Sunday night game between the Ravens and Bengals is one to forget, but the Ravens did pull it out to claim their first place spot in the AFC North. The Monday night game was very action-packed with the Kansas City Chiefs playing against division rivals the Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders took a 17-0 lead with a big 58-yard touchdown pass to Devontae Adams, but never count out Patrick Mahomes. Mahomes connected with his favorite target, tight end Travis Kelce, for 4 touchdowns to win this game 30-29 to advance to 4-1 and lead the AFC West and end Week 5. That is everything I have. Back to you, Nat.
Thanks, Matt. After the break, we come back with the case of the week. Stay tuned.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, and welcome back to Newsnight. Most of the student body of the Pittsburgh Public School.
Some of the United States allies.
Thursday, the FBI was seen raiding.
Let's get started with today's forecast.
Today's high will only reach about 31 degrees.
It's looking a little cooler than we've seen in the past few weeks.
All this and more
All this and more
All this and more coming up on Newsnight.
coming up on Newsnight.
coming up on Newsnight.
Welcome back. Today we are switching it up and we are going to be discussing how we think the Division Series and the MLB are going to go and our favorite matchups. Today I'm joined by Jacob, Matt, and Dylan to discuss what they think. So we have 4 games, the Phillies versus the Braves, Padres versus the Dodgers, the Guardians versus the Yankees, and the Astros versus the Mariners. Jacob, what do you think?
I kind of think that the best matchup, at least right now, it seems like it's going to be the Padres and the Dodgers. I feel like Padres-Mets going into the wild card series was definitely the most loaded roster. Like, they were 2 loaded rosters going into wild card weekend. And I feel like since it was the only one that went 3 games, even though both games were kind of dominated by, like, 1 was dominated by the Padres, 2 was dominated by the Mets, 3 was dominated by the Padres. I feel like that was the most back and forth series. But I feel like the best story out of all of this is the Mariners. First time in 21 seasons, at least, that they've been in the postseason. And as of the filming, they were up on the Astros by pretty good numbers. So I feel like the Mariners are the best story, but I feel like the best series overall, at least in the NLDS, is going to be Padres-Dodgers.
Interesting. Matt?
In the NLDS, I actually think that the Phillies and Braves, I think even though the Braves put up over 100 wins, I really think the Phillies are going to beat the Braves. This comes down to, they are kind of inconsistent when it comes to putting up runs, but they've showed games where they can put up 7 runs, 3 straight games. And if they put up those amount of runs in 3 games, they win the series. So I think the Dodgers and Padres, I think it is going to be a good series because both those teams could dominate any given night. But I just think the Dodgers are just way too loaded for the Padres to beat them. In the AL, I love the matchup of Guardians versus Yankees. The Guardians pitching looks great right now. They don't hit home runs, but they get on base at a great percentage. And Astros Mariners, I think we would love to see the Mariners win that. I think that could go either way, but I'd probably say Astros will take it in 5 games, unfortunately.
Yeah, those are all very fair takes. I'm not going to lie. I'm going to have to disagree with you. I think the Yankees are taking that just because, like, they have the past playoff history. Beat the Guardians in 17, swept them in 2020. It's an identical team coming into this year. You're looking at the Mariners-Astros series. I love what you said, Jacob. 21 years. Mariners, hottest team in baseball right now, I think they're going to win. Padres-Dodgers, that's Dodgers in 3. 111 wins, 5 away from the all-time record. Like, nothing much you can really do there. And I think while, yes, the Phillies are a good run-scoring team, I think the Braves' offense just outpowers them. So
I will say this, though, like, of the games, at least, like, as of the filming, the games that have been played, there's only been 2 right now in game 1s, but both teams that have played in the wild card round have, like, performed early in the game. So I think, like, fatigue kind of set in on the Braves and the Astros. Like, whether or not that's the case tonight and for the rest of the series, I mean, that we'll kind of have to figure that out. But I think having games at least being played and, like, having to fight your way into this series without getting a bye into the series, I feel like that'll kind of prove well for the teams that have already played this postseason.
yeah, the positive momentum from winning those series has also got to be a factor.
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, any last-minute thoughts?
Should be fun. Should be good games to watch.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, I could see 3 of those 4 series probably going to 5 games, honestly.
Easily.
Well, we're going to have to see how the games go, guys. Well, that is all the time that we have for this week. We hope you are able to join us next week at the same Pioneer time, the same Pioneer channel, and the same Pioneer Sideline.